Today the music world mourns the passing of one of its most loved. Courtney Winchester, 24, one of the founding members of Britain's most successful girl group, Ascension, was found dead this morning in her flat near Hyde Park in London. Current reports indicate that the police are treating her death as suspicious. Although no further details are available at this time, an investigation is being launched to determine the cause of death. Miss Winchester's untimely passing comes during a turbulent time for the girl group, having been the focus of many tabloid headlines over the past 10 days, with news of a rift between the two remaining founding members of the group sparking speculation of a possible split. However, the group appeared on a popular television chat show yesterday as a united front, confirming the release of their 5th studio album, as well as announcing the signing of an American record deal that could help to propel them on the world stage. Tributes are coming into the studio from celebrities and fans in their hundreds, all expressing their grief and shock at the news. The country is clearly devastated at the loss of such an amazingly talented young woman. Any developments in the story will be reported as soon as they become available. Chapter 1. D.I. Andrew Martin sighed as he looked down at the body still sprawled on the floor in front of him, the forensics team partially blocking his view as they scoured for the evidence to point them toward the murderer. There was no question over suicide or accidental death. The blonde girl had been stabbed in the stomach 3 times before being left to die on her kitchen floor, her tight-fitting white t-shirt and blue jeans stained with her blood, yet there was no bloody knife anywhere to be seen. The morning had started off pleasantly enough for D.I. Martin, with a ray of light shining through a gap in the curtains as the sun rose in the sky, falling across his wife's red lips, contrasting with her pale skin as she slept peacefully beside him. The house was quiet for the first time in months. It was bliss, but also strangely unnerving. Opening the bedroom door as quietly as possible, he crept across the hall into his daughter's bedroom, peering into the cot to check on her. Her chest was rising and falling in a steady rhythm, a hint of a smile on her face, enough to let him know she was alive. Tiptoeing out of the room and down the hall, he entered the bathroom, quickly stripping down to take a shower. The warmth of the water felt great against his skin. Autumn had finally started, and as if by magic, the weather had changed, creating a chill in the air that was especially bitter so early in the morning. 10 minutes later he was downstairs, dressed, spreading butter on his toast and taking a sip from a steaming cup of coffee he hoped would wake him up. In his line of work there was never a way to tell what may happen on any given day, but he hoped his morning so far was a sign of good things to come. Then it happened. Just as he settled down in his favourite chair, Jessica's screams erupted from her cot upstairs. Andrew closed his eyes, knowing that if he had heard it in the living room, so had his wife and his 3-year-old son, Jamie. His fears were quickly realised hearing the creak of a bedroom door. He had left his own and his daughter's open so his wife would be able to hear any noise without using the intercom. Footsteps bounced down the stairs excitedly, rushing into the living room. Seconds later, Andrew felt the weight of his son's body pouncing on him, snatching him into a hug. Opening his eyes again, Andrew looked down at the top of Jamie's head, his tiny arms clutching at Andrew's chest. After receiving a quick kiss on the forehead, Jamie pulled back, sitting down beside his father even though there was barely enough room. He cuddled up to Andrew's side so his father had to place an arm around his shoulder in order to be comfortable. Andrew loved his son. The day Jamie was born was the happiest day of his life, welcoming his son, his firstborn, into the world. It wasn't that Jessica's birth wasn't special. It was. It was just less exciting because he knew what to expect. The problem with Jamie was that due to Andrew's working hours, his son rarely got to see him. Andrew would be up before Jamie woke, and often arrived home after he'd been bathed and put to bed. That meant that when Andrew was home, mainly on weekends or unusually quiet days, Jamie wouldn't leave his father's side, following him everywhere, wanting to spend every minute of the day with him. When it came time for Andrew to go to work, Jamie would kick and scream, begging him not to go, pulling on his arms, legs, trousers, shoelaces, sometimes even running out to the car, jumping into the back seat and holding on, refusing to let his father go without taking him along, something Andrew could never do, having to deal with dead bodies on a daily basis. As his wife, Sarah, came down the stairs, cradling Jessica in her arms, the 4-month-old baby girl quietly resting, She smiled, seeing her son and husband together in the chair. A part of her wished Andrew would spend more time with them, but she knew how important his job was, not only to the people of London but also to the family. 3 years ago, when Jamie was born, she had quit her job to be a full-time mother, leaving Andrew as the sole provider. She had been planning to go back to work, placing Jamie into a nursery, just before she fell pregnant with Jessica. Now she barely had time to think, let alone work. "Morning, love," Andrew said, standing up to kiss his wife with Jamie following, refusing to leave his father's side. "Morning," Sarah replied. "Jamie, honey, have you brushed your teeth this morning?" "No, Mummy," Jamie said, hanging his head, his small hands wrapped around his father's. "Well, do you want to show Daddy what a big boy you are? Quickly go up and clean them, and then you can come down and have some breakfast." "Okay, Mummy," Jamie said eagerly, a smile on his face as he jumped down from the chair and ran for the stairs. Andrew leaned in to give Sarah another kiss, adding a quick peck to the top of Jessica's head. "I feel terrible for suggesting this, but do you want to quickly slip out before he comes back down so we don't have another tantrum?" Sarah asked. "Do you think you can handle him after he finds out I'm gone?" Andrew replied, picking up his jacket and looking toward the stairs, checking for his son. "It's easier than trying to pull him off your leg. I don't think I have the energy to do that this morning." "Okay. Well, hopefully I won't be too late tonight. I'm praying for a quiet day." With another quick kiss, Andrew pulled open the front door, stepping out onto the autumn wind, quietly pulling the door closed behind him. Moments later he was in the car, releasing the handbrake, allowing it to roll down the driveway. Winding down the window to let some fresh air into the stuffy car, he heard Jamie scream. It must have been deafening inside the house. The lump in his throat throbbed, guilt and sorrow causing tears to form in his eyes. He hated deceiving his son, leaving him behind for his wife to comfort. If he could change how things were and not have to go to work, he would. But when Jamie came along, money was stretched to the limit, and he had no choice but to accept the promotion to detective inspector, a job he loved and had earned, but one which was unbelievably time-consuming. "Andrew! Andrew!" The familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. DS Rachel Pearce stood waving a hand in front of his face, trying to get his attention. Having worked with Andrew for nearly 2 years, being friends with his wife, and he with her husband, she knew when something was bothering him. "Oh, sorry, Rach. What did you want?" Andrew asked, finally looking at her. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking about Jamie, that's all." "Has something happened to him?" "No, it's just that he came down this morning before I left for work and was cuddling up to me, but I quickly snuck out to avoid a scene like last time. Only I heard him screaming when he realised I was gone, and it just kind of upset me, I suppose." "That's sad, but quite cute at the same time. The little guy obviously didn't want you to go." "I know, but it made me not want to leave him, and then I have to come here and see all those morons outside trying to get a picture of the body, and asking all sorts of stupid questions that even we don't know yet." "I have to agree there. Our job is hard enough without having to deal with every newspaper, magazine, radio and television station in London wanting an exclusive on what's happened. Her parents are only just being told, and they want to plaster it all over the news just because she's a famous singer. Not exactly caring, are they?" "No, but then I suppose they have a job to do, just like we do." "So, what's the story here?" Andrew asked, moving closer to the body. For the first time he got a good look of the dead girl. She really was only a girl, early 20s at best. Her blonde hair was stained with her own blood, her face frozen in a grimace, either from pain or anger. The perfectly manicured nails on her outstretched right hand pointed toward the door, where her impossibly blue eyes were also focused. She had watched her murderer leave. Miss Courtney Winchester, singer, stabbed 3 times in the midsection. Death occurred between 9:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. Was due to be on morning television but never arrived at the studio. Her manager called someone to check on her, but when no one answered the door, he rang her mobile and heard it ringing inside. Contacted us and we found her dead," Rachel said, barely taking a breath as Andrew continued to survey the body. "Any suspects so far?" he asked. "Well, the papers over the last few days have been saying there was trouble brewing in the group she's in, but then they appeared on TV yesterday to say everything was fine." "Hang on. They were on TV yesterday? What time?" 5 in the afternoon. Left the studio about 6:30. Between 3 and 5 hours before she was killed. How far is it to the studio?" Depends on traffic if she went by car, but I'd say about 30 minutes by car or underground. A lot longer if she walked. So if she came home straight from the studio, there's probably about a 3-hour window before she could have been murdered. Yes. And there's no forced entry either. So she let her killer in. That's what it looks like. Either that or it was someone who had a key. So then this is most likely a pre-planned murder and not just off the cuff. We don't know that, it's just an assumption. What we do know is that the murderer was obviously someone she knew well enough to invite in or give a key to, since she owns the place and there's no landlord. I think from that we can start coming up with a list of potential suspects, while we wait to see if forensics come up with anything concrete. Well, the other members of her group have to be a good starting point. We already know she was with them yesterday, which puts them at the top of the list since they probably had the opportunity to murder her. The same goes for anyone else who was at the studio with them yesterday. Managers, assistants, anyone. We can sort that out when we get to the station. Right now we have to worry about how we're going to get the body through that mob out there. Is there no back way out? It's a second-floor flat, Andrew. The only way in is through the front door and down that staircase. Right. So we'll need a full body bag then. We don't want the papers getting any photographs. They'll just end up on the front pages of the papers. And until we make a statement on how she died, we can't risk anyone seeing the wounds or blood either. It'll only help to fuel speculation and make our job 10 times worse. Sir? Excuse me? A young PC said, approaching the two detectives. Yes? Andrew asked. I just thought I should warn you that fans are starting to gather outside now that the news has been reported on TV, which may cause a problem with the ambulance getting through, and they've already been delayed. Should we set up a barricade? Oh, this is just brilliant, Andrew said, walking over to the window and pushing the net aside to look out at the gathering crowd, many of them carrying flowers. Don't worry, I'll sort them out. They'll just want to pay their respects. You concentrate on getting all the evidence we need to go forward from here. We're going to have to try and solve this thing quickly because I have a feeling those out there are going to be at us day and night until we've got the murderer, Rachel said, heading for the door with the young PC. Andrew watched through the window as Rachel was surrounded by a mob of journalists all shouting questions at her as they shoved microphones in her face and pushed her around, all vying for position. There was nothing she could do other than attempt to usher the growing crowd away from the building. Turning back to look at the body which was now ready to be taken away, Andrew hoped the ambulance would arrive soon. He hated seeing any dead body, not because they made him feel queasy, but because he was always reminded of how fragile life is. The girl lying in front of him was only 24 years old. She hadn't even begun to live life yet despite her fame. He had been the same age when he met Sarah, almost a decade ago, and it was days like this that made him grateful for having a chance to experience the life of a husband and a father. Have you found any evidence to point toward the murderer? Andrew asked the forensics officer who approached him. I'm afraid not, or at least not yet. We'll be able to do more tests back at the lab to search for hairs, fibres and fingerprints. There are no clear markers though. No forced entry into the flat, several knives that could be the murder weapon but none appeared to have anything on them, no wounds on the victim other than the stab wounds which would indicate that there wasn't much of a struggle. There are no markers in the blood like footprints or fingerprints. It looks as though the murderer was very smart. Usually they at least leave a little something behind. So that would point to a premeditated murder. That's for you to decide, we just find the evidence. It could be that the person lashed out and then realised what they'd done, so tried to cover their tracks. I've seen that many times. Someone cleans up after the murder. But then why not clean up all of the blood? Maybe the killer knew they could leave incriminating evidence if they approached the body or tampered with it. They didn't want to risk being caught. Which was quick thinking if it was a spontaneous murder. Anyway, thank you. I'll go and see how Rachel is doing with the mob out there. See if we can get the body out of here any time soon. Andrew walked back to the window to peer out on the crowd which was still growing. He threw his head back and let out a loud sigh. He walked to the door, placing a hand on the knob, pausing for a brief moment before pulling it open to the sound of intrusive questions from the press and hysterical crying from the fans.